And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and yes, the boys are back in town. Believe it or not, Toronto FC preseason has kicked off with players reporting for the first phase of training camp. A lot of familiar faces, probably a lot of faces you didn't think would ever be back in a Toronto FC shirt, but yet... yeah, it's January 2024, and here we are. On today's show, we'll be asking you and asking ourselves, is there anything optimistic to think about going into this training camp for TFC? We'll talk about John Herdman's comments, both at MLS Media Day and at today's press availability. We'll talk Deiby Flores. What are TFC getting in their one so far main signing? And of course, the return of the burning question. Lots to dig into this week with my co-host. The full gang is back. Michael Singh, Jeffrey P. Nesker. Gents, how are you doing?
Who's going first? You want me to go first?
That's a ringing endorsement.
Yeah.
That's a good start to the year.
I mean, today's been mental. Like I was saying before we started, I've been staring at a computer screen writing a screenplay all day long. So I've kind of invented my own language. But I missed you guys. I didn't get to join you for the official season premiere last week. So I didn't get to ask you this question. How was your New Year's, boys? Did you do anything special?
As I said last week, no, mine was quiet. I spent most of the time here at home, and everybody came to us, so that was awesome. Mike, you probably had a more interesting holiday than I did.
Why do you say that?
I don't know. You probably just did. I don't know. You probably ate some cool stuff, went to a cool restaurant.
No, not even. So we do the same thing every year, where we have a friend who's down by the water, close to your place of work there, Mike. They do a fireworks show every year at midnight, obviously, and we go and take that in every midnight, and then we have drinks and a bit of a party back at their place. So we've done the same thing for the past couple of years. For me, it's just another night.
Just another night.
I
You
love
didn't
it.
get stuck in all that the viral memes and viral videos were going out of Union Station and the Gardener at around probably 12:30.
Reminded me of a TFC game, eh? No. We have a place downtown as well, so stay there and avoid all of that mayhem, all that traffic. But yeah, no, I saw that video, and like COVID times kind of still drives me the wrong way when I see stuff like that, man.
Yeah. No possible way I was going to be caught in that. If I got caught in that, I would have pitched a fit. I would be viral at this point. I would have done something.
And that's part of the reason why New Year's is so, like, again, to me, overrated. It's just like, it's so busy. It's busier everywhere. It's more expensive everywhere. Like, it's way better to do kind of what you're talking about, or like with my situation here, just find somewhere to stay in, get with some good company, and chill out. Jeff, what'd you do?
Well, I love it. I honestly anticipated that one of you guys would still be in the, Princess Charming New Year's by obligation kind of thing. So I'm pleased that this entire crew is over that garbage, because you're 100% right. It's just another night. And I didn't plan my New Year's out that well this year. We sort of blew our energies the night before on karaoke, and by the time New Year's rolled around, we were all pretty sleepy. So next time, better planning.
What's your karaoke song?
Anything George Michael, if I've got
faith,
the music in me.
Faith in you?
Oh, 100%. That is a go-to for sure. Turts coming in hot. Love the new glasses, Mike Newell. I immediately feel like you're 100 times smarter now, and you were already really smart. So I am in awe of the intellect.
I guess
I'm not sure I'm the smarter. This just helps me look at the screen a lot better because everything was really fuzzy for the last couple of months.
Man.
So hopefully I'm a little sharper today.
I gotta say, like the it's tough to find a pair of glasses that I think fit your face. It actually is a challenge because I have glasses too.
Wow,
I
show
have
and
these
tell.
bad boys, and straight on my face, I don't know if it does it justice.
I like it.
But
I like it. I love the tint too.
It-
It's a little Hunter S. Thompson.
it's not actually
60s.
tinted. It's just because of the reflection.
Yeah,
It's
reflection.
got like the
nice,
blue
okay.
light reflection on it.
Yeah.
But for you, man, I feel like those pair of glasses just fit you. Anyways,
You can thank my wife. I have no real fashion sense when it comes to that stuff, but she does. So when we went picking the glasses, she essentially picked out my glasses for me. So
That's a smart
I think
move.
you got to go. I think you got to go a bit wackier. I think you could get away with purple frames. I think you could get away with like navy, like
Oh
like
yeah.
blue frames.
Baby
Did you see
steps.
that? Remember
Baby
that
steps,
baby
guys.
blue shirt that he was rocking? Come on, Mike.
Oh my god, so nice, so nice, unbelievable.
Baby steps on the glasses fronts, guys. I got the shirt fits down, especially in the summer. The glasses we're working on that.
I always joked my girlfriend about because she picked out my glasses too, and I always joke with her that she got me like the ugliest pair of glasses, so no one ever will talk to me again. Like, no one's entertaining me whatsoever. From the
I'm gonna
girlfriend.
roll that. That's a good. That's a good.
Yeah.
one.
That's a keeper.
All right.
That's a
I'm
keeper.
sure everybody is revealed by our glasses talk, and maybe we'll make that a segment in the future about what glasses will Michael Singh get for his new pair. But that's not what you
Miami
all
glasses
tuned in
to
for.
match
Yeah.
the shirt.
Yeah, that's not what you tuned in for. You turned us to talk about TFC, start of the season, training camps around, well, not even around the corner. It's here now.
It's here.
We'll get into Herdman's comments because I think they're very interesting. The start off camp, but I wanted to reach it to both of you guys and sort of ask you this question because it is the burning question this week, and we'll get to some of the responses behind that shortly. But is there anything that you're optimistic about going into this season or going into this training camp? I know there's a lot. We will parse a lot out of John Herdman's comments, but just off the cuff, is there a reason for TFC fans to at least feel optimistic? I'm not even talking about like, is this team going to even make the play? I'm just talking about like, is there a reason for optimism in TFC land? Because it doesn't feel like there's a lot, at least from the fan engagement perspective. But you guys tell me, maybe I'm missing the boat here. Jeff, you're back for New Year's. I'll start with you.
Oh man. I'll tell you this. Had I been on the show last week, I had plans. I had big plans, fellas, to turn over a new leaf. My New Year's resolution was, all right, it's a new year. I am not going to harp on the DPs anymore. I'm not going to harp on the team anymore. I'm going to be Mr. Positivity, and I'm going to somehow somehow reset the clocks. Well, that lasted 24 hours, I think. It's just so hard. It's just so hard because, you would have to do like a full media blackout because, I know that it's agents fishing. I know that most of these accounts are non-reputable accounts, but it's just an endless chorus of nonsense. You know what I mean? So it didn't last very long. I gotta say, I'm disappointed in myself, but thankfully it didn't cost as much as the gym memberships of old. So what are a New Year's resolution if not something to be broken within the first week of the new calendar year? But yeah, I had it all planned out. I'm not there anymore.
Well, that was quick.
Took 1 week.
Hey, season tickets still cost a lot as much as gym memberships. Okay, so just keep that
Thanks,
Mikey, how about you?
Let me spin this around. Is there something that you can tell me that Toronto FC excels at? Like genuinely, is there something you can think of? Anything? Give me something. So there's one thing I can think of.
Pissing me off.
Oh, I got something.
They take really good care of like players' families, so they do that job really well. What else do they do really well?
Aaron off the top rope. Chaos. Agree.
You know what they do really well? Porchetta sandwiches. Those porchetta sandwiches are they're great. I've learned to love them. They do those really, really well.
Wait till you
No.
learn they've removed them this year.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
No. Get
Okay.
No.
That
was an existential crisis. I saw it.
There was. No, in all seriousness, though, I do think they do. At least the start of the season, they really do this thing of trying to get people back on board. I'm not saying they do it necessarily successfully all the time, but I think they do. And we'll get into John. We might as well start getting into John Herdman's comments.
Mike, that's not a good thing. That's like a Florence Nightingale good thing, right?
Yeah. Hey, look,
every time they mess up, they don't apologize.
I started with a porchetta sandwich, man. I am stretching the realities here. I'm stretching it here. I know, but go ahead, Mike.
So here's my thing. So this is what they don't do well. Results, obviously. Last 3 seasons, absolutely brutal. They don't score goals. They concede a ton of goals. When they try to fix one, the other one gets worse. It's been a constant cycle, right? Until last year, in so many different ways, they hit rock bottom, right? They have 2 designated players on their roster that, say what you will, but they don't want to be there. They would rather be somewhere else. They miss on their DP signings constantly. This has been a reoccurring issue since
2019, really. Pozuelo.
Since pause.
About it.
Right?
Yeah, since pause. Yeah.
They miss on like 70-80% of their acquisitions or their signings. So take away DPs aside from it, I'm talking like roster players like this just over the last 3-4 years. Like they're not bringing in players who other teams feel are valuable at the price point in which TFC sign them at or acquire them from. When players come to Toronto, ultimately their value decreases. They have their local talent thinning out where you only have one player right now that is a constant Canadian men's national team call up. When was the last time that happened with Toronto FC's history?
Yep.
When was the last time they had one call up consistently?
I don't know if ever.
There's no one
ever.
There's no one aside from Ozo that's really that close right now to getting into that men's national team. Sure, maybe it speaks to how much better the men's national team is getting and that we're getting some more European talent, but this is supposed to be the premier destination in Canada when it comes to soccer. You certainly invest that way, and yet so far from developing quality national team talent. On the same note, they haven't done a good job at developing talent whatsoever, right? They can identify talent. They have a lot of good prospects, let's call them, coming through the ranks. They've had good prospects coming through the ranks, but somewhere in between developing them and them becoming good players, that part's missing out. And it's been that way for a couple of years. And I also don't love the way they treated Michael Bradley and treated some of their, stars on the way out. Like when I'm going through this list and I'm thinking, okay, like what is it in this team that they do well? Do they scout well? Are they savvy on the books? Are they good at developing talent? Are they good at, do they have a good national team presence? It's none of those things right now. So when you ask me, is there something to be optimistic about? The only thing you can really point to is that now the team has John Herdman at the helm. Now Jason Hernandez is there. Now there's new people that are in a way, because we'll get to it, writing their and making their mark on this team. But it's still being impacted by the same overall, I want to say, culture that's being implemented at TFC. So if you ask me if I'm optimistic, there's no way you can be optimistic right now based on what we've seen.
Okay, I get that.
Yeah. I mean, it's inarguable. It's inarguable. I'm excited about Peter Galindo. Congratulations, Peter Galindo.
Shout out, Peter.
Absolutely.
Super shout out. I think it's well deserved, and I'm looking forward to seeing. I mean, we know he knows his stuff, so now we get to see almost by consequence, if there's anybody at that organization that listens to people that know what they're talking about, if he's got any kind of power there, or if he's just sending in reports that get ignored. I don't like besmirching my club this way, but I have no faith in anything at this point. Like, this is rock bottom, for lack of a better word, although I do think it will get worse.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, you illustrated it quite well, that it's well earned, that pessimism amongst the fan base, right? Like, it's well earned. I am an optimist by nature. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing.
It's good for the show. Otherwise, it would be a downer for an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I'm an optimist in this way about Toronto FC. I do feel that John Herdman can potentially bring the good vibes back into the team. Okay, I'm putting results aside for a second, because that is still yet to be determined in a lot of ways. But I think the first and foremost thing is he's got to bring some vibes back to this club. As I've said a couple of times on the show, I did not particularly like this team last year. Not just from results perspective, but just some personalities. You just didn't like a lot of the people in the team. You didn't like a lot of what was happening and what they were bringing to the squad. This is outside of just the DPs too, because I know they get a lot of flack for this. And I think there needs to be this sense of, we're trying to build something together. And they say it a lot, but the actions never really matched the words. And that's where I think, for me, I have some optimism in John Herdman, because I've seen it work before on the women's national team, on the men's national team. Now, I know a lot of fans are getting kind of sick of John Herdman always pointing back to, this is what I did with the women's national team, this is what I did with the men's national team. But that's why we hired him, right? That's part of the reason why we hired him.
Absolutely.
So from that perspective, I'm optimistic that he can potentially bring the vibes back. Now, this leads into his interview with Football Americas with Sebastian Salazar and with Herc Gomez at MLS Media Day last week, in which, of course, it was a short interview. I think it was only like 6 minutes or so, or at least that's what they cut it down to. But it goes into the big piece of that interview, which a lot of people took away, was this idea of buy-in. And that's a word that's being used a lot around the club right now, is, are people bought in? And more importantly, are your two most expensive players bought in?
Oh, they're bought in.
Well, they're bought in. We'll talk about that. What are they bought into?
But they're not bought in. Yeah. What a wonderful song. They're bought in, but they ain't bought in.
Exactly. And I'm going to read the quote here, and I want to get your guys' impression on this.
I'm never doing a cold read ever, am I? Not ever.
You want to do a cold? Do it. Do it. If you want to do it,
I think it's hilarious. We'll wait another couple of years before I'm allowed to do it. Go ahead.
Okay. I think it's a continual process. You can say that about any of the teams I've worked with. Players will buy in at certain stages, and then they'll buy out and buy back in, or buy back in. So I've got to work on that every day. I think for those two, Federico and Lorenzo Insigne, there's a buy-in, because they want to change. They have a chance now to take this team to the top of MLS. There's just no more excuses for any of the players there. They've had a reset. They're getting a full preseason, and will work on that buy-in towards what they want. And buying into what they want is to become top in MLS. That's where they believe they can take this club. I'm buying into their vision as much as they are buying into mine. Okay, so that is what John Herdman said at Media Day. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that, because there's things to parse out there. The biggest thing for me is, I don't know if he's actually gotten bought in from these guys yet. He was asked a very straightforward question, are these guys bought in? And then he gave us that. Kind of leads to a no for me, or at least not fully, but wanted to get what you guys thought. Mike, I'll start with you.
So Herdman's in a tough spot here, because of these are players that he inherited, and this is a situation that he inherited here. And the situation is that Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne would probably rather be elsewhere, but no one can afford their contracts. So they have to do what's the
What
best
they're doing.
alternative, I guess,
Hmm.
which is try and once again reconcile the situation here at Toronto FC. But then it's just a matter of, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, fool me three times, then it's
What
like,
are we doing
what
here? Yeah.
what are we doing here? But that's the situation, is because what's the alternative? What is Herdman supposed to do? What is Herdman supposed to say? What's Insigne supposed to do? What's Bernardeschi supposed to do? This is the situation of three parties right here that I think don't want to be in this situation, but they're like, well, let's just try and make the best of it, and hopefully, we can turn things around. Maybe we increase your value, and then we get that offer that we're looking for. But I think it's just, what else are you going to do, and what else are you going to say at this point? They got to say they're bought in. They got to try and make do here, and hopefully this this ends up being a situation where maybe they can turn things around.
Mm. I mean, yeah, like it's a non-sentence, right? A continual process. I have buy-in. Those two things cancel each other out. Bought in, unbought. Like at the end of this thing, you have whiplash because it's a whole mountain of nothing. And I completely agree with Mike Singh. I mean, they can't not speak, but anytime you put a microphone in anybody's mouth at this point, regardless of what camp they fall into, it's going to be the same old, because everybody's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Everybody. And no one's prepared to drop that shoe. If they hate being in Toronto as much as we think they do, it's easy. Mutual termination. But they love money. So, and we're not going to buy them out because that's a ton of money and a huge PR disaster. None of this is new. My question to you guys is this, and it's a difficult question. Imagine this isn't the 300,000th time we've heard this statement. Uh, you know, uh, would you buy it? I mean, the last time I was here, I was talking about just being in a room with John Herdman as opposed to being separated by the glass screen. Big difference, huge difference. I was ready to walk through a wall for that guy. Reading this, I'm not. Reading this, my eyes glaze over because it's insanity. But I'm asking you, you look at this objectively, which I realize is impossible, especially for the three of us who have had to, bandy about this for far too long. Do you buy it? I mean, the language is so vague and obtuse. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to think back to the way Bob Bradley spun it, which is very similar, but it was certainly more definitive than this. I mean, this is a non-sentence, right? So,
Hardly have even
are there,
answered the question.
yeah, I'm trying not to answer for you. I'm just wondering if I'm being too cynical because words have meaning and I want
No,
sentences to
the
make sense.
the one variable here is obviously John Herman's now the one doing this, and he's proven in the past that he can do this. He can bring fresh ideas. He can, I mean, he's a motivator. If he's not coaching, he's motivating people, right? And okay, put tactics aside, which again, I still think John Herman gets a bit of a bad rep for, but if there's one thing that he can do, he can motivate people in different ways. Will it work with the Italians the third, fourth go around here? I don't know. I just feel like it's, and getting ahead of myself, but it's so
Mm,
important for everyone to kind of get off on this right note. The second some things go wrong, that's when I feel like it'll start to crumble fairly quickly because they've been there before. They've seen this story before.
absolutely.
They're now on their third coach in Toronto. And the first two obviously didn't work out with them. So is there a way that Herdman can kind of steady that ship and do things a little bit differently? We're hearing a lot of the same things. So
Well,
maybe there's
yeah,
stuff behind the scenes he's doing differently.
yeah. I think we're hearing all the good Chip Herdman stuff that we're all used to from the national team, right? And
Mhm.
that's he's trying to bring in those same process. A lot of almost all the same people that were involved are now involved in Toronto FC. And as I said in the past, it's hard to bet against him because he has succeeded everywhere he's gone. right? And now you define what you define what success is, but he has been successful, and I think that you can be optimistic that he can change parts of the locker room around. I think he can do a lot for the, let's call it, non-DP players that are in that locker room. But as he mentioned today, there's a leadership group that he, has put together. It includes Lorenzo and Federico, but it also includes Jonathan Osorio, Sean Johnson, and Shane O'Neill. 3 guys who have extensive MLS experience. 3 guys who have won MLS Cup in the past, and have done things to balance those 2 out. I know there was a lot of sentiment around why would you put them in a leadership group. I don't, as you said, Michael, I don't know how you don't, just based on the fact that they're here, right? If you don't put them in, you end up in probably this similar situation you were last year, where people 100% are unhappy and think they should have a role, etc.
You could even tell when Herdman was asked that question, he was like, I got it.
Here it comes. Yeah, here it comes. Can we confirm that because I heard this and it almost made my day. He made Berna cry, John Herdman, in a one-on-one interview.
I think that's one way of framing
John
it.
Herdman. Yeah,
I don't think he made him cry. I don't think he bullied him and he cried. It just
oh man.
I'm
off Herdman train.
Again, this is Herdman saying this, so we can only hear Herdman's account of it. But apparently, Bernardeschi got emotional when talking about the past here at Toronto FC and what was happening at the club, and how passionate and how bought in he is to get things right and fix things.
Cool. Let's bring out the Juve fans to get the complete opposite. Let's do that right quick in a jiffy.
Yeah, and that's the other half of this, right? Is we can have all the good Herdman isms that come out, but as Jeff, you pointed out, we also have this history, and we know what this looks like. And if you weren't somewhat laughing at some of Federico Bernardeschi's off-season posts of him working out in Armani briefs. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like,
around, man.
Yeah. You do have this fool me once thing. But on the other hand, the 2017 team, if you look at it back, they didn't all get along, right? There were issues, and they figured it out. And they figured it out because they won. But winning solves a lot lot of those problems, right? Maybe not solves them, but it can mask a lot of those issues.
Of course. 100%. I just,
So just, I guess, circling back to like the whole leadership committee thing. They had their leadership committee last year that included a lot of the same voices, along with Mark Anthony Kaye. The difference being that Michael Bradley is no longer there, and obviously no longer part of that leadership committee. And, he kind of caught a stray today too, when Herdman.
That's the second time.
Yeah, when Herdman had to mention, Bradley or Michael Bradley and Bob Bradley's relationship and how it was never going to succeed, and how it kind of created an awkward dynamic in the dressing room, which, okay, fair in hindsight, that certainly was the case, but using that as a scapegoat is
so reprehensible.
One hell of a move, given what Michael Bradley has given to this club. I
was surprised it got brought up. To be perfectly honest,
I was surprised it got brought up at the season ticket event, and I was doubly surprised that they're still parroting that out.
Yeah, look, I get it. I understand it, and I know this was an issue with some of the players in the locker room, and I get the idea around why it can be an issue 100%. I'm just surprised that this, again, kind of is going out in the public, and we're still kind of talking about it. Okay, if you felt that way, you felt that way. I don't know if everybody in the fan base is going to necessarily agree. I don't know if it matters if the fan base agrees. But again, it's one of those things where it's do we need to talk about this right now? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the thing, right? And this goes back to this whole, we've talked about alumni and why alumni don't come back and why, this club has this issue with big players when they're done here, right? It's you start shooting strays at them as soon as they walk out the door. Yeah, they may not want to come back and do your alumni stuff and want to be a part of the club and be an ambassador and things like that. And then it makes you think about, okay, well, you have this leadership group now. Where's the power dynamic within this leadership group, right? Like, of course, they're all going to say we speak with one voice as a leadership group and we talk about everything and stuff like that. But in all groups, there's some power dynamic involved. And where does that lie, right? When you've got the two highest paid players in the team, you've got the presumable captain, which we'll talk about in a second, in Jonathan Osorio. You got a well-respected player in the league in Sean Johnson, and a guy who commands a lot of also respect amongst the players in Shane O'Neill. Where does that all lie? Can they all get on the same page as a leadership group? The history kind of tells you no, right? If a lot of the same voices were in that group last season.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to that fresh start mentality, right? I think everyone's kind of trying to approach it to that, and as soon as they, get rocked with some adversity, that's when true colors will show, and maybe they can sustain it this time. The hope is that they can, and the hope is that what John Herdman said about Michael Bradley no longer being there and not having that dynamic is that they can sort things out themselves. So hopefully, again, it's glass half full, I guess, looking through that lens. But yeah, I'm not too concerned about quite honestly, the leadership group itself. Like you said, Mike, off the top, they have to be included in that.
Who else are you going to choose on paper? JMR?
Yeah.
I mean, the cupboards are bare, right? Those are the only people that could be on that list.
Yeah, it's more so just how much of an emphasis is now being placed on the leadership group. Kind of tells you where things are from a cultural standpoint, right? And it's a lot of it. A lot of it got aired publicly, so we know a lot of it. There was I don't know if we're going to touch on the CJ Sapong.
Let's touch on that. Let's touch on that.
Yeah, let's touch on it now because it's on. Yeah, let's talk about it.
No, I want Mike to finish his thought because I think he was onto something really truthful there.
What was I onto?
Uh-oh.
There you go.
No, I think you were onto the fact that none of this, we can't take any of this at face value. It's all window dressing. It's all window service. I mean, even this easy pat recontextualizing that everybody knew that the Bradley thing was going to be a disaster from, that comes down from the guy that said the first coach I would work with if I was ever a GM of MLS franchises is Bob Bradley. I think you were getting at the truth of the matter, which is all of this is talk. Talk is cheap. We have in our recent history examples that this team crumbles at the first sign of adversity. So I can't fault these moves. That's a leadership committee. What I can fault is that if we're going to run it back with this cast, I think the one thing that needs to be ironed out in the sharpest of sharp reliefs is player accountability. I don't think a leadership council is even half of what it needs, right? The very idea of a leadership council is sacrosanct to individual agency. Committee, like, if there's one thing I want to see addressed, it's that no one gets to hide behind the royal we. And we seem to be setting up the very same royal we to hide behind when the S hits the fan. And I don't like that. You know what I mean? It seems like, not only are we rolling back with the same cast of characters, but we're rolling back with the same general organizing principle. Both were miserable failures. So I don't like that at all.
Fair. I will push back again as the optimist and say,
please,
that you have
like
that
drowning
you have
in negativity
again. And the optimism is John Herdman, right? Like that's right. That's the thing. And I think if you have somebody who, as you said, Michael, is a really great motivator, somebody who can get people of very different viewpoints and backgrounds and sort of ways of thinking to meld together to accomplish something, then I think you are in a better spot than you were last year with Bob Bradley, who, let's face it, like, obviously, look, historically is a fantastic manager in this league, one of the best top 5 managers in MLS history. I don't think that's a question. But it is a little bit different on how he handles those kind of things. It's kind of my way or no way, right? And I think you have now a manager who can bring in those disparate voices and try to bring some as close to unity, I guess is maybe the best word, as possible. You're not going to get everybody to buy in all the time on every single thing. But if you can find somebody who can really shape what the culture is, and he talked about it in the press conference today, like the first phase is going to be a lot of physical work, obviously, and getting everybody fit. But it will also be about continuing to build the culture. And that's going to be a big part of that phase 1. So if he can get that culture going in the right direction, I won't even say fixed, just getting it in the right direction, whether the Italians buy in or not, I think you're in a better spot to compete. Now, does that turn into results? That, again, is yet to be seen. But I think if you're an optimist and you're thinking about this or trying to think about this from an optimist point of view, I think you can start to at least put your finger on that.
And I guess one more thing is, like, the Italians are kind of out of chances here. Like, what are they going to go through another head coach and a guy in John Herdman, who
everybody knew that John Herdman was a bad idea.
Well, are they going to go through another head coach, right? So they have to kind of put all that ego aside that they were showing earlier, right? There's no more Bob Bradley excuse. There's no more Terry Dunfield excuse. It's now onto your third head coach. At a certain point, the buck stops with them. And that's kind of the accountability thing that you were kind of alluding to, Jeff, is like, okay, at this point, they have to be accountable for their actions. At this point,
new MLS CEO too.
All those non-negotiables that we were they were kind of talking about. Now it has to be a bit more strict when it comes to accountability. So there are certain things that are working in TFC's favor there when it comes to getting this right. But again, that's kind of just optimistically looking at things.
Fair. Let's talk really quickly. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mark, I don't know who said it. It might have been you, Mike. This is feeling awfully like I can fix this, which is hubris, right? He's not on the field with them when they concede a goal inside the first 5 minutes of the first game against Cincinnati, and all of this goodness turns into dropped posture and petulance. He's not on the field, right? How many course corrections is he capable of doing before he's exhausted?
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like you were given a brief. He took all this time to survey the team. What has he addressed about that team? Now, I understand his hands are tied. I understand there are shoes to drop, but that doesn't exclude everything. What tangible stuff has he done to address the problems with this team that isn't just a lot of good vibes leading into the eventual crash that happens 5 minutes into game 1 when Brandon Vasquez's replacement scores a world on us? Absolutely nothing. That's why, for me, it's difficult to be optimistic.
That's surface level a little bit, though, Jeff, is like we're looking at results, because what about Robin Gill, who's brought in, and all the mental performance, kind of work that they're trying to instill there behind the scenes. So there are things he's actually trying to do to address that. But obviously here we just judge by results because we don't get to see that work being done on a day-to-day basis.
Right. But if you talk to, or you listen to players, you listen to managers talk about the game and talk about what goes into the game, how do you prepare for matches? So much of it is about the mental, right? So much of it is about the mental. How are you mentally prepared for the game? Are you in a positive space to go out and perform and to address the tactics that have been put in front of you for that opponent? And last year, and it speaks to a lot what you're talking about, Jeff. Like last year, they got punched in the mouth once, not even punched. Maybe they got lightly tapped on the jaw, and they would
100%.
fall apart. They would fall
apart.
apart. And I think again, from the Optimist point of view, John Herdman has done a lot in his other roles to fix a lot of that, where players were down on themselves, they were down on the program, they were down on the idea of what are we doing here as a culture, what are we doing here to try to help us win, and a lot of that is fixing that mental. That to me, that is the first thing before you start releasing everybody and just get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy, bring in this guy, bring in that guy. You can have a carousel of players. TFC has done this in the past where they have rotated one team out, rotated another team in, and ended up with the same results because a lot of the mental was not there. That culture of what are we doing here, it was not there. So I think if you have that in place, you can start to see that change. Do we see it immediately in terms of this team all of a sudden becomes a mentality monster and can grind out result week after week after week? Probably not. We're not there yet. But I'm optimistic that we could potentially get there. But it will take time. And it will mean that, yes, some players have to go, or some players are going to have to humble themselves and buy in. And we'll see. People generally don't change, but maybe this is a time where these two players realize, hey, me just going back to Italy really easy isn't as easy as they thought it was going to be.
That's the thing too. That's 100% the thing. And I have a lot of time for John Herdman. So if there's one person I'm putting my faith in, it would be John Herdman to do that. It's a lot of faith.
It is.
It's either, I've said this, it's either going to be his Trafalgar or his Waterloo. There's no in between. This is either going to make him or break him. And I hate this statement because it makes me sound like a misogynist. But do you think that if they didn't listen to Bob Bradley, who's one of the most winningest coaches in the league, in the history of this league, they're going to listen to a former Canadian women's national team player? I mean, the answer is no. It has to be. Or maybe they'll give lip service. They're very good at false pretenses, but I don't buy that. I mean, they need a drill sergeant, someone who's going to spank them at this point.
But they had a drill sergeant. His name was Bob Bradley. That was the drill sergeant. That was supposed to be the drill sergeant.
I think Bob Bradley failed because he didn't have the power to take these guys over his knee and spank them.
Of course he had the power to take it. He wasn't just the manager, remember? Like he's the guy who also signed all the contracts, right?
Well, he didn't sign these guys.
Right? Like he had that power. I don't think the day of the iron-fisted, all-encompassing football manager that signs the players and disciplines them all, and those days are gone. Those days are long, long gone. Take that from two Man United fans. That is long, long gone. You're not going to find those guys anymore, right? It's going to have to be a committee of people that understand that footballers are humans and that you got to figure out how to best work their mental, right? And
you got to know when to fold them.
True, absolutely. And look, they would fold these guys if they could. Right now, you can't. So if you can't, you better try to make the best lemonade you can out of maybe some bad lemons, right? Like that's where we're kind of at. And I think Mike, and I think even Jeff, to a certain extent, you've already sort of touched on that, right? Like we're at a point now where we're going to have to deal with these guys. And maybe we'll just roll really quickly into CJ Sapong's comments on the Cooligans podcast, because he did talk about the fact that, I think, what did he call it? An Amazon Prime drama
documentary.
Yeah, like that locker room last year. And in the sense that at a certain point he had to kind of focus on himself, and focus on making sure that and again at a certain point, that's what I'm talking about fixing the mental, right? If you're in a situation that's so bad that you're like, whoa, wait a minute, okay, I just got here and now I need to take care of myself because this is whatever this is right now. You got to find somebody who can do that. And the idea is that it is John Herdman. Mike, I don't know if you had any more thoughts on his comments, but.
Yeah, so the one thing I'll say about CJ Sapong is that from a mental standpoint, that's something he focuses not only just his game, but his lifestyle around. He's very spiritual when it comes to stuff like that. So for him to come out and make these comments publicly, not surprising because everyone knew what CJ, like we've talked about this for 8 months straight. So he's not breaking any news. The Athletic did their report on all of this. We've talked to them about this. Like this has been public knowledge, essentially, aside from a player coming out and publicly saying anything about it. CJ also owes Toronto FC nothing anymore. And I think he's been in lots of situations in the past. So the situation that TFC was, as public as it was, tells you how bad it was for CJ to actually have to make a, he didn't even he even said, I'm not confirming anything. But, you can tell he's kind of alluding to it. So I don't have any issue at all with his comments. And I think it's actually kind of refreshing where someone can actually just openly just touch on it.
Couldn't disagree
That's
more.
my take.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Couldn't disagree more. He's a free agent. He's shopping for a team. What he did is essentially shitting on his former employee in his new interview. And I don't like easy narratives. And that's what the disaster that is TFC has become. It's become an easy shorthand, the way it was in the bad old days, where anybody and anybody can reach for it in lieu of anything else for whatever agency they want to realize. It's fine. I take no issue with what he said. I mean, who cares? Is it true? Is it not? Who cares? I take issue with the context of it. I take issue with, this lax that has allowed our dirty laundry to become shorthand everywhere. And then I take issue with the fact that at the end of the day, the major thing that I took out of that is there was a moment where I decided that it's all about me.
Okay, so he didn't exactly say that. Okay. No. What he said is that yes, he did have to focus on himself because certain things within that room were nuts and he had to obviously think about his own career. But then what he said right after that was then he started thinking about the young players and seeing how the young players were handling things. Right. And he decided that, hey, I want to help some of these young players navigate what was going on in the locker room. So yes, there was a point where he was thinking about himself and probably did. And then there was this other part where he was also thinking about some of the younger players who were navigating something like this really for the first time in their career.
I'm thinking about the young players right now, and I'm probably doing as much for their careers as CJ the Hero did. And I don't need to get on my podcast and talk about it. I mean, what is this?
He was asked a question about it, and he gave
and he answered. And he's a free agent. He's
Focusing
allowed
on
to answer that.
Focusing on my own career, one goal. Focusing on the youngins. No.
What does his stats have to do? What does his stats have to do with anything there?
Because this is an unreliable narrator, right?
Why is he unreliable? He was in the locker room.
We know this, Jeff.
But we know it. We talked to two reporters that wrote the story.
But he's not there. He's not there doing a TFC interview.
He couldn't do that if it was a TFC interview. There's no way that'd allow him to say that.
But they did. The context of him appearing on that podcast was a unilateral, we're going to talk about your experience as a free agent, which is the lead, right? Your experience as a free agent, what you can bring to teams, et cetera, et cetera. Now let's circle back and shit on your former employee.
But he was asked about the club. He was asked about it. It's not like CJ being like, "Oh, guys, I don't want to talk about this." Oh, yeah, let me just air that. He was asked a straight up direct question about the locker room specifically.
And you say, you know what? I'd rather keep that to myself. I'd rather keep that to myself.
I mean, yeah, sure, but that just tells you kind of how bad the locker room is, where he
and it tells you how easy a shorthand it is, and nobody feels any obligation to not air dirty laundry because it's out there, and it's now a tool for all the CJs of the world to use for their own personal betterment, and I don't like that. My club is not a shorthand.
I don't know if that's an own betterment thing. I think he answered the question.
Shorthand at this point. Come on, Jeff. The last year that the club has been.
I don't disagree. Somebody needs to stop this train.
Yeah, of course.
I don't disagree with you. Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
but I don't have to like it. I don't have to
Yeah,
like
no,
it,
fair.
and I don't.
That's fair. Look, a lot. You
Mm,
weren't the only person that felt that way, Jeff, in
mm.
terms of his comments. But like, I don't think he said anything that was completely egregious. I don't think he said anything that was out of bounds, and I don't think he said anything that was particularly untrue. Right? Like, there were a
You're a
lot of people in
sporting
that locker
director.
room looking for themselves. Right?
You're
Last
a
season
sporting
went.
director. Does that interview color your decisions to hire this guy? Forget about stats. The fact that he's so willing to dump on his outgoing team, that doesn't fill
Probably
you
not.
with the certain.
Probably
Okay,
not, because a lot of,
good
you
for
know
me.
why? Because a lot of executives thought exactly the same things he thought about with TFC. That's the truth, right? Like that.
That's fair. That's fair. My personal experience, huge red flags, huge.
Fair, fair. Okay. I mean, look, I think that again, he just exposed a lot of the things that we already knew and sort of talked about, both last season and this season. One of the players they've brought in to sort of help change some of that is Deiby Flores. As we sort of transition into just talking about some of the potential, well, player that's signed and potential players. 27-year-old Honduran, former Whitecaps player, central defensive midfielder.
Is he? Is
Um,
he really a former
well,
Whitecap?
I mean, look, that he is being, well, he was. I mean, yes, we've seen him play for Honduras. Um, ball winner. Sort of the idea of he is the destroyer in the midfield. Um, I'm not sure. Some people have tried to put the not comparison per se, but he is like, this is the guy that replaces Michael Bradley's spot. I'm like, no, he's a guy who's going to bring depth to your midfield. I don't know if he necessarily bring Michael Bradley in the same breath as Deiby Flores.
There's not even a Michael Bradley spot anymore, just based on the system shifting.
True.
I
Right?
was going to say the
It's no
same.
longer
Yeah.
playing. It's just a sole ball playing six in the middle of the park, single pivot. Right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
complete new system. We talked about this last week, Mike. He fills a need for Toronto FC. They didn't have someone who wins balls back, gets stuck in, and like really commits to tackles in a way that almost energizes his teammates. He's a bit of an energizer bunny in the midfield.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
that regard, strict ball winner. They had Mark Anthony Kay last year, who led MLS in tackles, but this is a different type of tackler, right? It's a guy who like really will get stuck in a 50-50. Mark Anthony was not afraid to get stuck in and put his foot in, and he did a good job in that regard. But this guy does it with just a little bit more
Force.
yeah, force, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have that when it came to
No.
TFC. Now, is he someone who's going to move the needle, and is he game changing signing? I don't think so. But the one thing that Herdman kind of touched on in his presser is that signing like this gets the best out of your players higher up the field, which is the goal. This has a ripple effect. It allows your players up the field to have more creative freedom and have less responsibility defensively. It's just a matter of will it all piece together. So it's exciting in the sense that it's a different profile, but I don't think it's like a very exciting signing, which is kind of who he is as a player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's nice to see a need addressed. Let's not overlook that. There was certainly a hole in the roster, whether it's a depth signing or a dyed in the wool starting number 6. There was a hole for that single pivot. Maybe he platoons with Cuejo. Maybe he earns the spot for himself. I reserve judgment on that one. Like Turt says, we got our destroyer, and I do love midfield destroyers. So hopefully he destroys.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
then
he's midfield depth at this point. Maybe he starts, maybe he has a platoon role. But
Exactly.
I think sometimes those quote unquote unsexy signings sometimes are some of your better signings, right? In terms of what you said earlier, Mike, about this team getting better at identifying that level of talent, right? You can go and get the names, but can you identify that level of talent to round out your team? And we'll see with Deiby Flores. Another name that's out there as a rumor. Now this has been bandied about sort of in France a little bit, but Ronel Pierre Gabriel, a right back, currently plays at Nantes in League One. It looks like he's out of their plans. He has not gone with the team to did not go with the team, to their winter training in Marbella, which I'd love to go to Marbella this time of the year. But yeah, it seems, at least from reports from the Keep and from other outlets, that there is interest from Toronto FC. Now, he is a right back, which then asks the question, what do you do with the two young right backs you've already got?
Nashville.
If that's true, yeah, some put Nashville's in for right back. I don't know if there's a lot to say here in terms of the rumor, because it is just sort of a rumor out there. But does this kind of fit what we kind of need? I thought we were looking for needs, not necessarily additional.
You said it.
Pieces.
Well, let me ask you, who's this team's right center back right now?
Fair.
If you're playing in a back three.
Fair.
So that's where
Probably
he comes in, and he's played across the back line, right? He's even played a bit at left back. So we've seen, I've talked about this a bunch, what John Herdman did with Alistair Johnson and Kamal Miller, where they start off as natural fullbacks, and he now converts them to sort of those outside center backs in a back three. That's where a player like this, I think, does fill a need for this club. So yeah, you see right back right away. He goes transfer market page, you see right back, but he's a bit more versatile than that. You're right, and Herdman loves his right wing backs right now, and in Kobe Franklin and Jaquil Marcheretti. He had another quote about Jaquil today about him breaking some records when it comes to some fitness testing. And I mean, I think there's a lot to like about Jaquil. I think there's a lot of really good starting points. It's just about him taking that next step, which, he's still 19 years old. So there's absolutely a way that he can do that. And I've said this for a long time now. I think his best position is that right wing back position, which he never got really an extended run for. He was actually playing pretty solid before he got injured. And then obviously Richie Larrea comes in, and there's no more right back role specifically, but it's never been really right wing back. So I'm really excited to see what Jack does there. And then obviously Kobe's there as well. So it would be really fascinating to see if TFC just move and get a strict right wing back, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a move to be more of a right center back.
Yeah, they need defensive depth in that role anyway, right?
Holy crap!
So yeah, who you can get is who you can get at this point. All right, gents, let's move on here. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about the rumors that are coming in, but we also talked about vibes around the fan base. We did ask a burning question this week, so let's just jump into that and get some responses from the group. So let's jump into that burning question.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was running the guy. Here we go.
Welcome to the burning question. All right, so we asked TFC Live, is there anything that you're looking forward to or optimistic about?
Don't say porchetta sandwiches. They're gone now.
Yeah, if you say porchetta sandwiches, completely fine. You're looking forward to this season. And a couple of responses here. A lot negative, obviously, but I think there's also some positive out there. Canadian Soccer Talk just comes in and says, optimistic that Tyrese Spicer will be the league's Golden Boot winner. Okay. Hey, you never know. Weirder things have happened.
Never know.
Christy B, zero optimism. So much is broken. I can't see any beams of light through the rubble. She actually thinks it could potentially get worse.
I read that one and cried.
Yeah, that would make the show really depressing after a bit. Noel just writes in. Noel just writes in and says, I guess we might be good for one or two more wins with better coaching. Nothing has changed enough to be optimistic. New coach, one new player, not counting draft picks, is not enough to turn this club around. The toxic elements are still here, and the rest of the league is adding players. Not much hope. That is a good point, because a lot of the teams that were supposed to be around TFC have made significant moves to their roster. Now, whether they work or not, we don't know. But it is.
Hello, Emil Forsberg. That was a surprise. I'm excited about that.
Well,
Yeah,
I
no,
think
very true.
I think we should just quickly touch on that. And John Herdman said today that TFC seem like they're doing some salary cap gymnastics in the sense that they're really trying to be specific about the numbers. And obviously, Jason Hernandez is very numbers savvy when it comes to that. They have some other people in that front office that do place a greater emphasis on the numbers and the salary cap side of the game. So
Mhm.
this is very much a mapped out play. Herman said he's hopeful that things will pick up in the next 2 weeks. So I do expect obviously a lot of transfer movement, both inbound and outbound. But there's some dominoes, I guess, that needs to fall. And he says, I mean, he kind of said like things can change on like a daily basis,
Yeah,
which is
because
something we already knew.
I think he said they're
Mhm.
taking about 28 players to Florida.
Yeah, he doesn't want to bring
Yeah.
a big crew because he just wants to
Yeah.
concentrate on the action items.
Yeah,
All
and
28
really
of them.
quickly, I'm forgetting, not Wesley
Charlie
Sharp.
Sharp.
Charlie Sharp, right?
Yeah.
So the draft pick. We talked on our draft special about whether or not he was going to go back to school. They drafted him in the 2023 MLS Super Draft. Striker, did really well at NCAA. He is in camp with the team, so he's clearly decided to try to make it as a pro. So we'll see a lot of forwards trying to vie for the number one
another
striker
forward.
spot. A lot of strikers. So we'll see how he does in camp as well. A couple more response here, more on the positive side, which to be honest, I was completely surprised that we got some positive ones. But Greg saying new season, new coach. While TFC aren't winning trophies this year, I believe they underperformed last year. Hopefully Herdman can get our DPs to play somewhere near their potential. Kimbo just writing in saying JMR and Kobe Franklin taking steps forward this year. Kirk continuing his development into a regular MLS starter. Io to walk the walk. This is a big year for Io if he stays with the team. And hopefully Insigne embracing the reality / opportunity to become a leader for TFC. Let's touch on that in just one quick second. And then Leo just writing in, I'm holding on to the belief that there's no way we can be as bad as we were last season.
Leo, you sweet summer child.
Yeah. So like a lot
It'd
of
be
like
really tough.
Yeah, it would be really tough to be that bad again. Is it possible? Hey man, it's TFC. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
But one last thing I want to leave us on before we head out tonight is the captaincy that was addressed
good question.
very briefly in John Herdman's press conference today. Actually, Jonathan Osorio also got asked about it in his press availability today. A captain has been named. They have not made that public. It's supposed to be in the next couple of days, so we're led to believe probably by the time they're well into Florida, we'll know who the new Toronto FC captain is. We've talked about this before. I think the prevailing winds say it's Jonathan Osorio. Something in my gut tells me it may not be.
Me too.
But wanted to get your thoughts on the potential new Toronto FC captain.
Well, there's 5 candidates, right? It's the leadership group. It's Jonathan Osorio, it's Sean Johnson, it's Lorenzo Insigne, it's Federico Bernardeschi, and it's Shane O'Neill. As much as I love Shane O'Neill, let's take Shane O'Neill out of that conversation. Although, wouldn't that be hilarious if they come out?
Hilarious.
Shane
Shane
O'Neill,
captain, baby.
Mm.
Let's go.
I'd love it. I would actually love it.
I would love it. I'd get his kit.
Quietly.
Yeah.
So Bernardeschi, I think we can rule out as well. So Sean Johnson, Ozo, and Lorenzo Insigne, I would say 3 front runners. For me personally, I'm with you, Mike. It's the easiest layup in the world. You cannot botch this. It's Jonathan Osorio. Anything other than that, you're overthinking it. But let's overthink it.
Yep.
Lorenzo Insigne last season was given the armband, and we know there's plenty of reasons why he didn't deserve the armband. But part of the reason he was given that armband was because Bob Bradley wanted him to buy in. Now, we just spent this entire show talking about the Italians buying in and taking more accountability and taking more responsibility. Well, one way to kind of do that is to put more responsibility on the shoulders of said face of the franchise in Lorenzo Insigne. So that could be. So the only way that Lorenzo Insigne gets captaincy is if I think that mentality. It's just like let's give it to him. Let's get him bought in.
Another
here.
cookie.
Let's do this right. Exactly. But for me, that would be a bit of a slap in the face towards Jonathan Osorio if he does not get that, given everything that he's given
the
to the
entire
club and what he
locker room.
represents,
Forget about Oso.
and the
yeah.
year and the year that he kind of went through. So I think it's a no brainer. It's got to be Jonathan Osorio.
I hate it, but I don't think it is. I think it's either Sean, as a cookie on his contract year, or Lorenzo for all the wrong reasons. Prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because like you said, it's the easiest layup in the world. I just think, like a lot of things, Oso is the victim of some really bad timing right now.
Yeah. Yes, it's it's a 2-foot bunny. Right?
Yep.
It should be Oso.
Should be.
If they do the social media graphic and it's Sean Johnson, I won't be shocked.
I understand why. I understand why it's
Yeah.
Lorenzo. I don't have to like it, but I mean, we
I would actually be more shocked if it's Lorenzo, just given last year.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I know. Like, obviously, he's been captain at Napoli before. Like the idea of getting all the reasons you just gave in terms of him getting him bought in and taking more responsibility on the team, that makes sense. It makes sense. I still would be kind of shocked. I think there's got to be some people in that locker room got to be feeling some kind of way about what happened last year.
All kinds of ways.
Right? And you got to be like, really? Even though I know he got the armband a couple of times during the season, it should be Oso. If Sean Johnson is standing on a social media graphic with the lights flashing in the background and the red around there, and he's got that Toronto flag armband on, will not be shocked at all.
I would be shocked.
Nope.
I would be.
Fair.
The thing about that, it's worth mentioning. The only reason why Insigne was given the armband last season was because Jonathan Osorio was injured.
Yep.
Right. So every time Ozo was in the lineup and Insigne was in the lineup, Ozo was still that captain. So it means something to him as a Toronto boy. So I would be surprised if, for me, it's come down to Ozo or Lorenzo, and the only reason Lorenzo gets it is everything that we covered.
Yeah. I actually think giving Oso the captain's armband right now may be a poison chalice. Honestly, for me, there's two things. Are we going into this season with one or both of the DPs or none, which I think the board is still out on? And two, what happens when we concede that first goal and the second goal? What happens? Are we looking at the same deflated group of island of misfit toys, or are we seeing some kind of difference in how they respond to getting punched in the mouth? Because then they'll turn on Oso. So if it's the same old, he's too close to the old establishment, with those two still in the room. I hate to say it, guys, as much as I hate it, I'm seeing a lot of logic in just handing it like we're handing our club to the Insignes and the Bernardeschis of the world, giving them the agency that they refuse to take, mandating that agency, since nothing else has worked. I'm starting to see a lot of benefit to it, despite the fact that I hate everything about it.
Nah, it would never work. Even if you gave it to him, I don't think it'd work.
We've tried everything
It's
else.
a noble idea, but I just don't think you get buy-in that way. You can't buy buy-in, if you want to put it that way.
We tried. I mean, we $14 million.
Yeah, and it failed. You can't buy it. That's why you tried. It didn't work. So buying it with a piece of cloth around your arm isn't going to do it, right?
Maybe it does. I don't know, but I'm saying at this point, considering that I'm here talking about trying everything so we can properly tie a bow on this unbelievable failure, I'm starting to see the logic in it. I hate it, but I'm starting to see the logic in it.
All right. Well, we'll see in a couple of days and what they do with.
I will say final predictions there.
Yeah,
in terms of who's going to be the captain.
Yeah,
I'm saying Lorenzo now.
I'll stick with Oso. I think it will be Oso. If it is an Oso, TFC Live will riot. Put it that way. I think a lot of people. Oh yeah, I think a lot of people will. Like, I know a lot of people will also be like, look, Lorenzo's captain. But I think a lot of people who've been around this club a long time. They will pitch one if it's not Oso. But we'll see. And then the other question is, does he also even want it?
That's
right?
a very good question, because I do think it's a poison chalice right now. I think the person that wears that armband right now, especially if they're a Toronto lifer, are putting themselves right in the crosshairs of the same old, same old. You know,
Yeah,
Well,
but
then
also
wouldn't you
Shark
want to
guy,
take that responsibility to rescue your club?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Ozo does.
but
Ozo
it's
cares about this club more than anybody in that locker room.
you're right. It just depends on how many strays he caught by being associated with the Bradley side of the equation last year, and whether he wants to be under that spotlight again.
I don't know if he was on the Bradley side of things. I could be seeing
I
him
don't
as a
either.
person that was like,
I don't
oh,
either.
this the father dad thing, not cool.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I can speculate.
we'll find out in a couple of days.
Mm.
We'll wrap it up there, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Toronto Till I Die. Two favors to ask for you guys this week. One, rate, review the show wherever you're watching or listening. If you're on podcasts, thank you for downloading. Leave us a 5-star and a review. And the second request is, if you're on the Bird app still, if you haven't blue skied your way out of there, give us a follow. We love it. At Toronto Till I Die pod. Just follow us there.
We're getting
on
close
Twitter.
to 1,000.
Yeah, I know.
I would love to see.
Big milestone. But yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. But for Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week, everybody. Cheers, everybody.
And wait.
Let's all go buy some lottery tickets.
And wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.